You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the Meta. The Meta controls everything. The Meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.
We're live! Alright, boys and girls, here we are back at it again for another Meta Show. I'm going to have to adjust from just talking to like 900 people on the fireside. Let's see whether I can run my mouth for another hour. We have two guests here today. Of course, a guest, Asher, is more like my co-host at this point, poor bastard. And Jay Amazingness has deigned to grace us with his presence, fresh on the heels of participating in an op that killed 2 test titans. So got a fair amount of shit already. Jay, Asher, why don't you guys say hello?
Hello, my name's Jay. I'm 20 years old and I live in the UK. I've been an alcoholic now for 2 days as I try to pack and find things to take away.
Jay is deigning to grace us with his presence, even though he's moving, which is pretty hardcore. Asher, what have you been up to?
I am now the 25th best FC. If you remember, I was the 24th last week, but in the middle of this week, I confused an ECM burst module with a Sino, and I tried to light the Sino, and instead I ECM bursted, so Jay demoted me to 25th best FC.
That actually happened
whilst
too.
Whilst we were trying to kill like a super as well. Like it wasn't just like a random Sino he was trying to light.
To be fair, the super still died, but but I did not like the Sino.
That is interesting. So, taking bets on the Mittani narrative, says Eve Riker. My bet is the kills were compensation for the PGL post. That's good. So we have people here already turning up, looking for the narrative related to the Titan kills earlier. So yeah, we've got a kind of interesting show today. Kind of interesting, I guess I should say. We have a very interesting show, but we were talking before the show about what we were going to go over, and we're like, yeah, what's been happening this week? Well, we have the Tri Keepstar fight that happened. Triumvirate, of course, lost their Keepstar. We had the leader of Triumvirate, Warren Samilia, on last week, and Asher was there leading a fleet of honorable third-party Serbs on that fight, and so he can give us a personal report of what that was like FCing there. We had, of course, this incident just an hour or so ago where Goonswarm and the Imperium killed a couple of test titans, the nanoed out Ragnaroks, hyperspatial rags. That happened. They didn't fit Sinos. That's always bad. Always fit Sinos on your titans. And Jay was there.
No, don't do that unless Goons fits on us. Everyone else, you need that smart bomb or that nude.
That's
you
right.
really need it.
We should have the we should have Sinos. Everybody else can go.
Goons are so dumb for doing that.
That's right. Goons are terrible for putting Sinos on things. We should be using those high slots for something else. You guys all go back to using your high slots. So yeah, that's a good point, Asher. Thank you. So we can talk about that, and also we had the CSM minutes came out, and the CSM minutes oftentimes are kind of boring. It's like, okay, CSM minutes have been sanitized to hell and back, so you don't really get an idea of what's going on. Well, it seems like CCP, after having some turnover with their community team, released the CSM minutes in a form that was not as comprehensively edited as previous CSM minutes, so you actually get much more of a raw back and forth, which includes highlights such as, imagine being trapped in a room with Sort Dragon for a week where 48% of all time spoken is listening to Sort Dragon talk.
They were done super lazily. The minutes themselves, they were I don't know, like a PNG or something. They weren't actual text. So like I was trying to highlight something so I could send it to someone, and it was like you couldn't, because you couldn't highlight anything because it wasn't actual text. They just made a copy of the page or something, and it was really weird and, like I said, poorly done.
It's fixed now. You can search for things now, but at the time when it was fresh out and everyone was looking,
Okay.
it was really annoying.
Well, at least the CCP knows how to iterate on something.
If only Eve had more PDF content, I guess, then they could. Wow. Let's see. Sword asks 177 times in the minutes or something like that, says Mech 101. That is a frightening idea. Yeah, I really don't know how I feel about that, other than I'm really happy that I'm not on the CSM and that Aerith and Anominate have been going for Goonsforum like heroes and dealing with that.
In chat, CSM crappy sort meeting.
Yeah, that's frightening.
Do we have prizes to give out? I think we should give a prize to that guy. That's just good.
That is a good line. Excellent. Thank you, Poo stuff. So yeah, I don't know. What do we think counts as the top story? We're really just kind of freestyling this today. I have got the top story. Which do we want to talk about as like the big thing for the show? Do you think it would be CSM stuff, the Triumvirate stuff?
We're already on the CSM stuff. Let's go on that. I mean,
all right.
I got some thoughts on it at least.
We'll make it official then. I'm gonna roll the top story graphic, and so we can ooh and ah at the top story graphic, and then we'll dive into the CSM. Yay! Okay. Quick question here from Ash from the Dragon Rider, which is, when is Boat coming back? A good question. Boat went to Australia with his lady love and is alive and well. We just haven't, he is spending extra time down there because his girlfriend or something or other, fiance, I'm not too sure what the details are, but he has extended his stay in Australia. It's not like we can't keep Boat down, we can't oppress Boat, we can't keep Boat from doing whatever the hell he wants. So the moment that he is back, we will definitely see him return.
Don't worry, when he comes back, he'll give you a 45-minute explanation whether you want to hear it or not.
Yes, the top story is Boat's Australian adventures. So yeah, let's dive into the actual top story of the CSM Minute. So Asher, since you want to talk about this first, I'm going to go ahead and throw this to you. What's your overall take on it? I know that we've had lots of people in INN analyzing it. There's been a lot of curious things. What leapt out of the minutes to you?
The Discord, it definitely seemed, and I don't know if the CSM is always like that and they were better at censoring it before, or if they have, or if this was a lot more, but it seemed like there was a lot of pushback from the CSM towards CCP, which I think is good, because I think that mirrors the the frustration that players are feeling. And when you read it on Reddit, it's super easy to say like, oh, that's just a troll, that's just someone out to cause trouble. But when they're in the same room as them and you can see the passion, hopefully, I mean, that's what I got out from the minutes. And we're reading, the sanitized version. So hopefully that CCP got a feeling that people aren't happy, because I think that's a fair statement of how most people are feeling right now.
It did strike me as interesting, the strategy session in particular, where they're supposed to be talking about like the long-term strategy. There was a reference to a CCP Hell Bunny, I believe, and Rivra in our editorial team was doing some digging and also just sort of finding who the hell is this person, and it is Sean Decker, who is I'm not sure whether he's actually the COO or if he's functionally the COO or what the deal is. He was was brought on from EA many years ago and was primarily based in the Atlanta office. So the person who seemed to be leading the strategy session, CCP Hell Bunny or whatever it was, is Sean Decker. If you are a CCP watcher, that's a very interesting thing, because it's the first time that I can remember that he has popped up in any real capacity as having direct, obvious, overt influence on the director of Eve.
I heard from someone outside of Goons that he is basically running the game. He's basically the lead dev or the lead the executive producer, because Seagull's not there right now.
Yeah, we do know that is. Whenever somebody is officially turning up in the CSM minutes as being like the lead person for the strategy session, that's quite significant. And the strategy session minutes, the main takeaway that I got was that if CCP Hellbunny or whatever his name is actually Sean Decker, the main focus is on daily active users. DAU, if you see that acronym, that means how many people are just logged into the game on a daily basis. Now that's kind of an interesting thing because if the theory of why EVE has grown over the years from the players in many ways, nullsec players at least, has been this virtuous cycle of big nullsec battles and war results in media coverage, results in people being interested in EVE, results in people trying EVE, some of whom are retained, and that the history of EVE sort of peaks and valleys relates to these big media events, that battles like BR5 or Asakai or the Great War, or whatever there's press about people having fun in EVE and having these massive conflicts, that brings new players in. So the question from the strategy session is, if the focus is purely on the daily average users, is that why we're not seeing any focus on improving things in nullsec? Because most of the average users in this game are just players in JITA and surrounding JITA. It's sort of a high sec scenario all the way around. I want to bring in Jay on this one. Jay, have you had a chance to take a look at the minutes, and did you have any thoughts on them?
Yeah, going back to what you said about the active users in like JITA and stuff, that you can see, because if you look at the previous changes they've made and how much they've added to high sec content recently. They've added like the agency, they added those FOBs they didn't really need to add. There's a bunch of stuff they added for high sec that they didn't really need to add, but they have, just because apparently people play in high sec, and they obviously matter to CCP because those are the people that are probably paying for subscriptions.
Yeah, the high sec response in the forums, as Arindus is pointing out in chat, is that CCP is only listening to nullsec and only focusing on nullsec, which is kind of it's funny because the focus that we've had on nullsec has been pretty half-ass as far as we can tell, and where it has been whole-ass, it's been in areas like FozzieSov, where there are simple fixes that could improve the SOV system, but they're not getting done. We do have the Citadel's patch that's coming in, which is, they at least got rid of the worst of the new Citadel patch, like with the GTFO thing and the onlining fitting timer. But I don't know. I have to say that whenever there's a big patch and it seems like there's going to be some feature that is just pants on head stupid, like adding Citadel GTFOs or a onlining fitting timer, like 5 minutes of fitting a Citadel just before it online, so every Citadel fight is a fully armed Citadel fight. I kind of wonder if the devs include those in the announcement specifically to be able to walk something back and be like, oh, look, we listened to the players. Like, we suggested doing this really stupid idea, and then we backed off and we didn't do that. And so people don't really have an opportunity to argue about the more nuanced issues that are brought up, because everybody's going, oh, God, please don't do the stupid thing.
Someone asked Fozzie that, and he said his basic response is, "We're not that smart." That's
well, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what I was interested in, and this is more into the details, but we were saying that Sword Dragon asks was like one of the major things. On the first page, like the first 2 pages, like the summary of the overall direction, I really liked what Sword said. He was on to a lot of important things, I thought, and doing a lot of good work. But then as you delved into the details, it got worse and worse. So I think Sword was doing a good job of trying to get CCP to focus on sort of major issues that are important to us. But then when it came down to actually fixing the issues, his takes were almost always wrong, in my opinion.
Well, that's kind of awkward when 48% of the summit is. So I mean, here you have a representative body. Now, obviously, so there was a chart in the minutes, or somebody made one. I think it was actually a chart in the minutes of the speaking time of who spoke the most. And some people were remoting into the session. So like I was like, oh, Jintan didn't talk too much. Jintan loves talking. What's going on here? And he was remoting into the session. He wasn't actually physically there. But it is curious when you see people going to Iceland and frankly letting Sort run his mouth so much and not speaking up. The Goonswarm representatives actually spoke a fair amount. I think they came in number 2 and number 3 compared to Sort. But it's just weird to see people go like, oh, well, I'm getting flown to Iceland to do this stuff, and I'm just going to let Sort Dragon represent everybody because we're not going to interrupt the fucking guy.
What you may have here is you've seen this on news networks where one guy says that I'm opposed to zombies, and then they find some crank on the internet who's like, zombies are great, and they give him equal time. Sort just may be the contrarian here, so he gets a lot more time, even though because he always takes the point that people either disagree with or oppose.
It's going to be really curious to see if he makes it in again another year. He will probably run again. There are some political shakeups though. I mean, he did. I don't know how many votes he would get from Blades of Grass. I mean, this is something that would otherwise get forgotten over the week, but they did kick Blades of Grass, whose values make them different, out of the Guardians of the Galaxy coalition this week. So that is at least some of his voters. I don't think that's going to be enough to really make a huge difference, but uh, I don't know. The other thing that's curious about this that you see from the CSM minutes is they don't really seem to have a plan when it comes to the Alliance tournament, and they don't seem to have a plan, whereby they I mean CCP. They don't seem to have a plan when it comes to actually the CSM election itself. FanFest is just around the corner at this point, and historically, the way that the CSM has always worked is you have an election before FanFest. Voting runs up until basically the start of FanFest, and then they announce the new CSM roster right at the FanFest keynote. And you've seen no movement from CCP on actually getting an election spun up, even starting to take candidates or whatever. And again, like they didn't really have anybody go over the minutes appropriately because they don't have the people or they're just not prioritizing it or whatever. So this CSM, for better or for worse, may be in office for at least a few months longer than anybody would expect.
I've got a new motto for Blades of Grass, and some of you like this one because they were just saying GOTG was saying that they never came on StratOps, and then Blades was saying we don't even care about being kicked out of Branch. I think they're going to Thrones. So how about our values? Never mind. Our value is indifference.
Our value is indifference. Wow. So Noisy Gamer is pointing out that the CSM election will happen in spring/summer, and that they said this in the dev blog. That is really interesting. So that is the first time that I can remember that the CSM.
That's like a 15-month cycle then.
Sometime in the spring or in the summer is kind of like, so whenever CCP says anything is going to happen more than like within the next 3 months, that's just everybody's red flags. I mean, that's just a huge series of red flags. People's ears should be perking up because, this also relates to the stations thing. Like we've been talking about the situation in Providence and how PL is attacking Providence and how that might turn into a campaign. And the discussion about Providence always comes down to, well, CCP says that they're going to add stations to be capturable and convert them into citadels. Well, that was something that they first talked about doing last year, and then they announced a while back that they were going to delay that. And then in the CSM minutes, we find out that CCP is saying that the change to have stations be capturable and turned into citadels that you can permanently take is something that they hope to have in winter, which in my mind means we're never going to see this feature. Or if we do see this feature, it's going to be like a year and a half or 2 years from now. So that's curious. I don't know. Do you think that there's any hope for the station capture shit getting in? I'm gonna throw that
in what time frame?
I mean, yeah, that's basically like what do you think is actually going to happen in terms of like realistic time frames for anything now that we've seen what's in the minutes?
I just add about 120% any time they give. I think that's about right. So if they say it'll be 3 months, it'll probably be 4 months after that 3 months.
That makes sense.
That's what I think it is. You mentioned earlier how nullstick battles are such a huge selling point for CCP, and Falcon confirmed that last week, or was it 2 weeks ago when he was on, that you had that they see a big uptake. Um, but then so that adds new subscribers. But then you look at the news this week that Activision Blizzard made more money off selling microtransactions than they did off actually selling games last quarter. So you got to wonder if Hellbunny doesn't see adding new users as the way forward, but if he sees as milking in the current users for the extra money is the way to improve the game, and maybe that's why they're neglecting nullsec so much and adding these high sec things where we know more people are, but they do less for the game overall.
Well, it's sort of an interesting question. Yeah, I mean, if they can actually monetize the player base more effectively, then that's a good thing because they can't seem to be growing the player base effectively. They're not capturing new players or retaining them very effectively. But I mean, I'm a fan of microtransactions in some areas, like particularly when it comes to cosmetics, like skins. Like if CCP wants to add more skins to the game and make people happy because
We
they like to
finally have pink skins coming.
Exactly. Like, people have said the interesting thing is about microtransactions is that people, in my experience, are pretty explicit about what they are willing to pay for. And people will tell you and be like, hey, why don't we have this? There was this era where there was that bug where people could have any skin for any ship, and everybody turned every ship they had into a police cruiser. If I was in charge of CCP, one of the first things that I would do is sell police cruiser skins for every ship, and I would rake in millions of dollars instantly just by listening to the players and giving them what they want. So I don't mind that kind of thing. Like if they want to focus on microtransactions as a new revenue stream and then plow that back into the game or into profits, that at least makes sense. But
in cosmetic microtransactions, when you say that,
cosmetic microtransactions. That's what I'm talking about. Obviously, microtransactions where people can just like pay to win are just completely off the table. I also
we already have injectors. I mean, that's already a thing. So
right,
they've
exactly
already breached that. Yeah.
Well, sort of not really, because the thing about injectors was you could always just buy a new character with ISK. They've certainly made it a lot easier by adding the injectors, to sort of get the same effect of that. The other thing is that the customer base of all online games and games in general have gotten used to the idea of microtransactions. The idea of a $70 monocle set off a riot in 2011, but in the year of our Lord 2018, a lot of this stuff is just like, oh, ho-hum loot boxes. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous, so people just aren't as upset about this kind of thing anymore. But I don't really know what CCP is going to do here. It seems like the takeaway from the minutes for me seems to be that they don't seem to have much of a direction in the aftermath of these firings. I mean, if CCP Hellbunny is now at the wheel because Seagull is out of the office for personal reasons or whatever, I don't think we should comment about that on stream. But they're in the aftermath of shutting down the Newcastle studio or selling it off and shutting down Atlanta and doing all these other sorts of things, the minutes seem to reveal a company that is just trying to get by day to day and putting off things that it used to be able to handle regularly, like having a CSM election on time and on target, doing an alliance tournament on time and on target. Like these are things that EVE has done for more than 5 to 7 years in each case, and now those are up in the air. I don't know. I should throw that over. Let's head on over to a. Do you want to say anything else about the CSM minutes situation before we shift topics? Jay, you first.
Not really. It just upsets me because how out of touch CCP are with the game.
Yeah. Asher?
It seems like that's what it is. It's like they need to have their devs into real alliances doing real jobs in the game. Like they don't know what goes on in this game, and I realized T20 was a really bad thing, and specifically for us. But I think at this point, the negatives of keeping them out of the game outweigh the positives, which was removing temptation.
Yeah, that is a tough issue, and I think that devs are probably in alliances. I think that CCP allows people to be in alliances as long as their characters aren't known to people. Like they can play characters as long as they don't get exposed as a developer or whatever. But I
But
have
how many of them are actually doing things in the alliance though? It's all good them putting characters in the alliance, but they need to like, I don't know if it's right to say they need to set aside like maybe a couple hours a week to go on fleets to get into those boring situations and figure out what's wrong with the game from everyone's perspective.
I feel like if a dev who had the power to set priorities organized one in Toastasop, we would get a change immediately.
Yeah, that's actually that is a real point. Like if CCP was set to go do it, like okay guys, we're gonna have a day here and we're gonna have the entire game design team go on a fucking Intosasop. Let's have a ride along and okay guys, now you're going to do some Sov lasers. Maybe that should be you know what? Maybe we could do this for Bernjita. Is we could have a tagline or something that everybody hashtags as like Sov lasers for CCP or some sort of catchy, really annoying catchphrase.
Mass contracting and Tosis links to the CCP alliance.
Well, we could do that, but I don't think any of them will log on. But if we do Bernjita and the entirety of the game is looking at us and we're live streaming it, and we have, because last time we did Bernjita, we said Bernjita for the kids because we were making fun of Care for Kids. But maybe this time we have a different hashtag and we have some sort of a reference to it would be interesting, I think, if we got all of Nullsec's player base together to essentially chant for CCP's developers to actually go on a fucking Sov laser op and get a taste of their own Sov system.
If CCP came to you and said, "Hey, we want to put this guy in, and he doesn't have the time to become, an Alliance FC," would you let? But we want him to get the experience. Would you let him have a character in here and run a Goonswarm op that involved that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it was pretty explicitly acknowledged. Like the challenge with the T20 stuff was not that the dev was there and was like trying to get experience. The challenge was T20 was cheating and was spawning BPOs for Band of Brothers, and he was also the leader of their capital fleet back in the day, where very few people had the understanding of how capital ships worked, and that gave him a tremendous amount of power. He was an alliance director and he was cheating. That's very different from, hey guys, like we're going to go on this op and we're going to have a dev do a ride along so we can actually see how things work, because at that point they're not really they're observing things and they're participating in a minor way, but they're not the captain of the soccer team, as it were, or football team I should say, because of the European audience. But that's let's see, there was a couple of questions here. Let's see. Actually, this was just a bunch of discussion about Sword Dragon touching the company. That is really creepy. So let's go ahead and talk about the I don't know, just the idea of all of CCP getting together and being made to go on, either made to, of course, that'll just piss them off, but encouraged strongly, like the EVE Online player base unites to get CCP to go on a Sov laser op. Like, let's go to fucking Pravi. Let's get like 15 devs on some op and not let them use fax hackers and be like, okay guys, now you're going to try to Sov laser this thing, and oh, now these are what we call a Fozzie Claw. We call them Fozzie Claws because your system made them exist, and ain't that fun? I don't know if it would change their mindset though. Maybe they'd see what they wanted to see.
The other point of it is how much changes are the devs allowed to make, because there's only a limited number of devs.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Yeah, and they're told what to program. They're not like, I don't think that maybe this isn't the issue for the developers. It's the issue for more of the higher management of CCP.
Yeah, I mean, you get the feeling from the minutes that the devs, there are things like it seemed even from the minutes, and you've seen on other shows where devs have been on, they've been diplomatic about saying it, but that there are things they want to do, but it's not in the plans. And you're right, it's their job. They have to do whatever the producer or whoever sets the tone says. So yeah, they may know these are problems, but if the focus is on something else, they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is that there's a few people who do set the priorities for the dev. So like, just if an individual line dev is like, well, I think FuzzySoft sucks, but like they are, they have a sprint system. They use Scrum and Agile, and so they have to deal with story points and presumably like a Jira tracker or something like that. I don't know what actual system they use to move things through the production line. But if you're a developer in a company like that, unless you are a game designer and are thus in charge of prioritizing what the company is working on in this particular sprint, you can be like, I fucking hate FuzzySoft and I think we should change it. But if the person who's in charge is saying, okay, well that's great, make more skins and allocate more resources to high sec dungeons, basically, there's nothing you can really do about it. So I mean, maybe it would be great to have all the devs suffer through a FuzzySoft op, but it doesn't actually change anything because their bosses are the ones who decide what they should be working on.
They brought
That's a really good
Larrikin in.
point.
They brought Larrikin in. He balanced Capitals, and then they sort of took him off that. And all the feedback we've had from Capitals hasn't gone anywhere. Like Fax are brokenly overpowered with their reps, and super carry UHP is kind of crazy. But no, that's not going anywhere. It's just, oh, we'll look at that at some point. But they've got the one dev who introduced these changes working on that, what are they called? The Sodios.
Yeah,
I
that's a
don't
really
think he's
good
working on
point.
that anymore. You judging by the minutes, I don't think that's something they're working on at all anymore either.
Oh, yeah, see?
Yeah, so you have somebody who's like an expert on capital ships, and Dark Razor, who became CCP Larrikin, is a veteran nullsec warrior and fleet commander, and so he brings a tremendous amount of perspective. And the changes that he had to capitals were things that we were big fans of. And yeah, that's a really good point, Jay. Is like, here's a guy who is an actual subject matter expert of how shit works in nullsec, and if the company's focus is on just like, oh, we're going to have random stuff in high sec, here are some dungeons we want to increase our daily active user count, that's not going to see any changes in nullsec. I mean, the other thing about it is there's an iceberg theory of high sec player base, where essentially you might have somebody. It is very hard for CCP to know who is actually a high sec player. Like, you have 80% of the game in high sec, but so much of the infrastructure that goes into any given nullsec player includes alts that are in high sec. So, you might be like, okay, well, there are these 10 characters that are in high sec, but actually those are all the alts doing like production and research and market trading and God only knows what else for
Same
a
thing
guy
with
who's
Renter.
actually a nullsec player.
A lot of corps won't let people rat in their own corp. So you have renters who are also people who are in another corp. And so saying renters are a real power would be incorrect because they do not represent themselves. The renter character doesn't represent themselves. They're a front for someone else.
Yeah. So, I mean, as JTYO is pointing out here, he's got 47 alphas sitting in high sec and only 10 in null sec. So there you go. Like, you have a situation where people are like, oh, we need to focus on the daily active user count and we need to focus on high sec. But is the raw numbers of characters in high sec that are active actually reflective of a high sec player base, or is some of that actually null sec players? Um, I want to change the subject here briefly. There's a couple things we're going to do. We did this for the first time on the last meta show, and it was a big success. So I want people to know that as we get towards the last 15 minutes of the show, we're going to put the chat channel into subscribers only mode, and we're going to start taking questions. But we do have a couple of news topics to go over before we do that.
Yeah, Keepstar died this week.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Keepstar, and then we can talk about the Titans. And as we go through, like the last 15 minutes, we'll be talking about stuff and taking questions. But we will continue to go through the news. So we're going to put the CSM minute stuff to bed. You guys can feel free to ask questions when we get to the Q&A section about that. But yeah, Keepstar, what the fuck? Asher, also Drinian just subscribed. Thank you. So people getting ready for that. We want to actually start changing our emotes on the channel. So like we have Frog out now. We have a Goonswarm B. We're going to try to get like a Commissar and some other shit in there to make the emotes a little relevant to the people supporting the channel. Keepstar, Asher, what happened?
Well, I mean, we talked about it with Warren Samilia on Saturday, and the fight was on Monday, and it was basically what we predicted. They were greatly outnumbered. They, took several pounds of flesh for their troubles. It ended up costing the attacker something like, I haven't looked at the exact numbers for a while, but I think it ended up losing like 550, 600 billion to blow up the Keepstar. So they did spend a lot more than they did. I think everyone comes away, with something to pound their chest about. Say one side says, "Oh, we destroyed the Keepstar," and Goon said that was impossible, while ignoring that there were half as many people in the system, and they had 5-to-1 odds.
Yeah.
And then Try gets to say, that we made them pay, twice the cost in this dearly, and they paid dearly, and we gotta shoot a bunch of them. I went to the fight, and we got in the system later, and it was just absolutely unplayable for us. We spent 35 minutes waiting for one fleet warp to go through.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and there were ships that would appear and warp away individually over and over and over and over and over, like while we're waiting for that fleet warp to go through. So we can never fleet warp. And I'm not saying that it didn't work once. I'm saying that fleet warp did not work at all for my fleet. So we were trying to have everyone warp to a place individually, which in massive tie-dye, you can imagine how much fun that is, especially on a thing like Serbs, where you need to move fast immediately or you can get bombed, which is eventually what happened. We got bombed. I tried to fleet warp, nothing happened. We told them to warp off. And then whoever lived through it, we were just like, all right, just get out and go home, because it was so bad that we did the same thing for our Jackdaw fleet. We couldn't do anything. I think we just got into the system maybe too late. Probably would have made more sense to camp the gates in retrospect, but you never know. The previous one, it worked pretty well. This one, the servers were just unresponsive. But apparently for the people who got in earlier, they worked better. So they ended up blowing up the Keepstar, and they lost a ton of battleships. There was a Raven fleet that had two different groups with AWACS, Alts, and Horde, and they all had smart bombs. So they lit up the smart bombs, and the Ravens inside of Horde's fleet killed all the other Ravens.
That was fantastic.
They were in there from like the start, so they've been there for all the way from, like, I guess 7RM or wherever they came from, C4C or whatever. And they got one that as soon as they land on grid, then they smart bombed. It was amazing.
That is beautiful. How many? I mean, did it only require like 8 or so? Like, how many smart bomb battleships did they use to infiltrate?
No, there was like 25, I think.
Yeah, there was like 20.
That's fantastic. I mean, that is the thing. Horde's policy of now that that's been done, I'm curious to see if people do that more often, because they literally just let anybody in and there's no access control at all. So pretty much any like random group from Bomber's Bar can be like, hey, we're going to get 20 people and we're going to put them in battleships and just nuke a Horde fleet because we can. And they don't have the capacity to stop that kind of thing. So if you're feeling interested and you've got a small group of people and you want to infiltrate Pandemic Horde, it's very easy to do, and these guys proved that it is possible to just go in, join their fleets, and smart bomb them off of everything. And
way more effective than bombers or anything. Just don't bother bombing them, just try them with alpha clones like Snuff did.
Exactly, like bomb them from within, which is beautiful, I think. We have a donation from Vladimir Putin. Thank you very much. So yeah, that whole thing is interesting, because even with 3,000 people, so here's a scenario where a Keepstar is getting attacked at a 5-to-1 ratio of attackers versus defenders, and the system is still functionally unplayable. They do eventually kill it, but a scenario like people on the attacking side can be as butt blasted about me saying this as they want, and I hope they are butt blasted. But the reality is that on a evenly fought grid where you have a roughly equal number of attackers and defenders, if the server was shitting itself with that level of people, with only 3,000 in it, it's simply not possible to take out a Keepstar with a even numbers, with block-on-block warfare. If it's everybody ganging up on somebody that basically can't fight back because they aren't part of a big blue troll group, like Triumvirate, that's one thing. But I think that this incident just further proved the Imperium's point with the 9TAC4 incident. I don't know. What do you think, Jay?
On the initial ref we went to, the server was really lagging. There was like less than 1,000 people there, and you were experiencing the same sort of stuff we experienced in 9TAC4, only not as bad. It was people DCing every few seconds, not being able to log back in. I think it's just assaulting a Keepstar, and and everything involved in doing that is just too much for the server. It's not really optimized.
It is possible that there's something unique to Keepstars that, like, one of the things about there used to be this thing, and I forgot exactly what it was. CCP Veritas explained this to me back when I was on the CSM, and this is outside of NDA range because it's been more than 5 years. But there used to be, there was this thing that during the Great War and a while afterwards, in Goonswarm we would say like an evoke, we would see like an evoke Kovops ship pop up, and then suddenly everybody would get disconnected from a system, and we were convinced incorrectly that there was something happening with these, like evoke would have a Kovops pop up, and then just tons of people would get dropped from the server. And what Veritas explained was that he eventually found the bug that was causing it. It had nothing to do with an exploit or anything, but there was some sort of a weird interaction between Brain in a Box and the local chat window that would periodically cause vast numbers of people to just get dumped off of the server. And once he found the bug and fixed it, the problem went away and we all forgot about it. But there can be things that are unique about weird aspects of the code in this game that will cause lag and weird system behavior in areas that just aren't there in other parts. So it is entirely possible that there is something about Keepstars themselves that is different from other fights over Citadels.
I would
That
suspect
they're
it's
just
the
laggy as
PDS.
shit. That would not surprise me. Yeah, the amount of calculations that have to go into that.
Because whenever in fights where I've seen, whenever the PDS is fired, even on a Fortizar or a Keepstar, you can get 50 people DC if it's a smaller engagement, but up to like 300 or 400 people can DC at a time if you PDS.
Alrighty, it is at the 15-minute mark, so we are going into subscribers only mode for Q&A and discussion. So cool kids only. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. We want to actually start doing more things like this to reward people who are consistent subscribers. This also means that there's less random puppies to Commissar because they can't talk because they haven't subscribed. So yeah, I don't know. It is curious. I think that the only one of the things that I have seen, and it would surprise me if you see other entities start to just shit out Keepstars, because if there's something about them with the lag that they create is itself a defense, you're almost guaranteed. I mean, do we know what the final Butcher's bill was for the Triumvirate fight? I know that before the fight, because we talked to their leader last week, they had done already more damage in ISK than the Keepstar itself cost to create.
I think Asher said it was like 500 bill lost. So
Yeah, I think it was
combined with
550,
last week, it's probably like about, this is called about 800 bill for him to this Keepstar is cost XIX and their pets 800 bill to assault.
That is ridiculous. Yeah, that
times
is.
that by 18 for Goonswarm. That's quite a lot of money.
Does CCP have a policy on refunds due to game glitches? That's one of the things, is that whenever they have these big fights and things just start breaking, CCP is just kind of like, there was a big fight. You knew what was happening going into it. And a lot of times people do not get reimbursed in the modern era just because CCP says, well, you went to a big nullsec fight and then you don't get shit, unfortunately, sure are. So yeah, that's... And as Manixara1 points out, that in addition to the costs incurred to the bad guys attacking that Triumvirate Keepstar, the additional cost that we don't see in terms of a kill mail is whatever Legion of Death was paying in order to hire people to attack this thing. So I hope that, as the economies in EVE advance, it wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing people doing, basically bait Keepstars of like, okay, like we're going to put this thing down here and it's going to cost us 250, 300 billion ISK, and we're going to just defend this thing and see if we can rack up 1 trillion ISK in damage or something like that. I do not know. But speaking of doing lots of damage, we've only got about 13 minutes left here, so I want to hear the story. Let's talk about what happened today, just before the Fireside Chat. There was a incident where Goonswarm and the Imperium worked together and killed a couple of Titans, a couple of Ragnaroks actually. Jay Amazingness was there on the field with a Rorqual. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what happened there.
So about a week ago, Test Ragnarok got tackled by a Weeform Volta and Snuff, I think it was, and they got this Rag down to like a third shield before he finally got safe. But I spoke to a few dudes who were at that fight, and they said the Rag dropped really fast and got a scan of his fit, and we started hunting him at that point. And Pittsburgh did a lot of the work for this one, so it's really his dunk. But
Congratulations, Pittsburgh. That's fantastic.
Yeah. He went out with a little roam or whatever and baited out the Rag, and but yeah, I didn't have as many dreads as I wanted. I assumed he'd be better fit. Because after the first engagement, you would have thought, he'd have refit from his hyperspatials, and he would have refit to full tank because he would have been spooked. But he didn't refit, so we kind of overkilled it with the dreads.
I watched the video, Jay, and the 2 Rags go down quicker than the Hell does.
Yeah, the Hell was like 40 kilometers off. He knew what was up, but the Rags, like, they died. One of them died in like 38 seconds.
Was this like a space violence thing? I've got a question here from Really. Is it a SIG or a squad that dropped, or just a bunch of interested, honorable third parties?
It was just a group of people out looking for a good time.
That sounds fantastic. Let's see what we have here. I actually did have a question I want to get, which was from Raufadog. I don't know how to actually pronounce your name correctly. Do I think that there should be a player-based event system that could spark more interaction between new players and old? And do you think that this would bring any more new players into the game? I think that yes, and it's called Karma Fleet. Join Karma Fleet. We have already had a pretty good system of funneling new players into the game and letting them actually have a real experience with EVE from the newbie-based player organizations between like Brave Newbies, Pandemic Horde, Karma Fleet obviously is the one that you should be looking at unless you're a terrible puppy. And I think that that's a much more authentic experience. I don't think that CCP would agree to a reward system for creating that kind of event because it would be too potentially open to abuse. But that, actually, I was about to ask for the video link, so Drenny Ann has put that in chat there for the Dread Bomb. That is interesting. So, what do you think? I saw that Riker Eve was at the very start of the show suggesting that he wants to know what the narrative on this is. What do we think the narrative should be for the Titan thing? Asher, do we need a narrative for this?
I mean, I don't know. It's
Don't know, huh? You really want that 26th spot, don't you?
I just feel like I'm not sure I should be the one to define it. Jay's the one who dropped it. Although, you know what? Jay doesn't really like to get caught up in the meta stuff as much. And, we're not on a meta show or anything, so
totally no meta here.
The relationship between Goons and Test has been a little strained lately, and we know that Test has a whole corp deployed that's dropping with PL frequently on Goon ratters and hunters, and I don't think anyone appreciated that. So I imagine that that this kind of shows that we can swing back if we have to, but I don't think we want to. I think we'd rather just have them not be here, not help PL, who is supposedly the enemy of both Test and Goons.
Gremlin is suggesting that we make the narrative that it was justice for Rat Salat's firing of the Test FC team.
Who's Rat Salat?
Oh, sorry, Rat Salad.
Rat Salad. That guy. That is actually one of the things about this that has been highlighted here, and I've got a question from Gibberish I'm going to answer in just a second. But we have seen, in theory, the point of the Test and Goonswarm and Imperium NIP is that the biggest threat to both Test and to the Imperium is Pandemic Legion and NC Dot. And of course, what we saw in 9TAC4 was that when the chips were down, Test was nowhere to be found. ProGod Legend and their diplomat both made a lot of noise about how they wanted to see all of us die. They didn't turn up to 9-4. They ran off to go attack the Tri-Keepstar. And of course, there is this corporation of test guys who have been in Delve for a while now, working directly with Pandemic Legion to attack Imperium members. So if Test and PL are actually working together, then what's the fucking point? So I'm delighted to see these Titans die. If Test wants to get their shit together, they can pull this brand new Bros Corp out. Obviously, the people that we had attacking Test today are just newbies experimenting. They have newbies just experimenting with content in Delve using carriers. We have newbies experimenting with content with dreadnoughts and Esoteria, tit for motherfucking tat. So, whatever.
Actually, I've changed my mind. I think the narrative is that we killed two in the U.S. time zone, killed two supers up north this week, and Jay just wanted to steal our shine.
That makes sense. That's right. You guys did run around on a murder rampage in the Northwest. I did see that. So I want to hit Gibberish's question, which is, do I have any opinion on the very clear, organized effort by former CO2 members to get GigX unbanned? I don't. I think it's cute. I didn't really have an opinion on it.
It's impossible.
Running around and going free GigX. I mean, let's not forget. I mean, can you imagine what would actually happen from a corporate perspective? Like, CCP unbans player who publicly threatened to cut off hands of other player. Like, they can
It's
run around.
impossible.
Yeah, like they can run around and rabble all they want about it, but like from a business perspective, because GigX had a meltdown on stream, and then PC Gamer did a whole thing of basically taking a cool round of press about an interesting Eve thing and turned it into creepy Servian threatens to cut off players' hands. Then CCP's hands are tied, as it were. Like CCP can't unban the guy, so it doesn't really matter.
We all know that GigX is playing right now. Like everyone knows it. CCP knows it. They're not banning GigX. They're not banning him from playing because he's doing it right now. But they are banning. Like they're never going to let the character GigX come back. It's just plausible deniability. So as long as he'll never get those characters back.
He also is going to have trouble like popping up and leading an alliance. Like it does make sense, as Asher points out, that GigX is probably playing somewhere.
Yeah, he's in like witness protection right now.
Yeah, but that means that in like part of his members trying to get him unbanned or publicly unbanned is that that alliance turned out to be kind of like a cult at the end of it. Is like you had GigX and his like diehards holed up in the Alamo, or like the Branch Davidians, like basically like the last group of their little cult in that Keepstar that conveniently got judged. But GigX can't lead them and be overt as being their cult leader unless he gets unbanned. So he's in sort of a bind, is that they want him to lead, and if he's in witness protection and he's like, I'm totally not GigX, but I'm in charge of this alliance that is full of old CO2 people, then he's just going to get banned again. He can't, it's going to be hard to lead an alliance from witness protection.
There should be a test. If you're a Serbian leading alliance, you have to show that you know how to use combat probes. And if you fail,
you must be GigX because you don't know how to probe. That's fantastic. So yeah, let's take a couple questions. We've got 4 minutes left before we call it a night. But yeah, they have a Discord they're using, and they're trying to spread the free GigX hashtag. That's kind of adorable. So like they can sit around and like say free GigX, but the only people who are doing that are like CO2 people, and nobody really cares. So somebody Voltaires is saying that he is in Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't really know if that's true or not, but whatever. So does that analogy make CCP Janet Reno? That's Clinton era flashbacks here of the Branch Davidians. That's good shit. So yeah, I don't know. Do we really need a narrative for like the weird thing about this scenario with blowing up those test titans is that we're in a place now where the Imperium is back in Delve. We're sort of chilling out. We have Siglin squads deployed. The rumor is that PL is actually serious about attacking Providence and taking space there, which would be a very interesting setup. Headliner is the new campaign commander over there. And I think that's going to be the place to watch for the next while in EVE is PL going to take huge chunks of Providence? Are Provi and Test going to work together to fight them off? And the natural thing to do before 9-4 would have been for Goonswarm to come in and shoot PL, because we pretty much always shoot PL. maybe we'll do that anyway. Maybe we'll actually be honorable third parties. What do you guys think about that?
Honorable third party is always fun. It is weird when we're like, you know what the next big Flashpoint in Eve is, guys? Providence.
God,
That's it.
that is brutal. The fact that it's gotten to the point of like, well, none of us can really take space or take keep stars or need to take space in the first place because Fozzie is ass and nobody wants to do it. So we're all going to have a slap fight about Providence because why the hell not? Yeah, I don't. Bad West is pointing out that PL is saying that they want those stations in Pravi, but yeah, like we were talking about earlier on the show, like I don't actually expect the stations to be able to be transferred or captured.
A year ago, we thought they would be like it'd be over by now because like we thought it'd be like December 2017.
Yep.
All the stations going to get changed, and now it's like December 2018. And what's going to happen then? It's going to be probably 2019.
Yeah, it's basically like with the buildable Stargates. Like, okay, sure, they say that we're going to have capturable stations, but is it really going to happen anytime soon? Certainly not within the next release cycle. We've got the patch coming up within like the next week. But then after that, it'll be a while before there's like another real expansion or major gameplay change. And by that point, like, these wards in Eve typically only last like at most 2 months, 2-3 months for a campaign of a major cycle. So
one positive change they were talking about in the CSM minutes was removing jump fatigue from jump bridges. And what you could see there is you could see, I wouldn't want to call them proxy battlefields, but let's call them extended battlefields where neither side has a capital force directly in range. But both sides are trying to contest it just with subcaps. Because if you can just take a few systems and hold them, then you'll be able to jump bridge for a relatively far amount of distance away. And so you could send subfleets, which are more fun and require less commitment. And I mean, like when all the capitals are in one region, you can only have 2 FCs that run things, and every decision becomes like a huge one. Whereas when you excuse me, when you can just send a capital fleet away, a sub-capital fleet towards that area, it becomes a lot like, yeah, let's spin up FC number 48 and send them out and get in a fight with these dudes. So that could be a big positive change. There was a post from Muck on Reddit about how it was a bad idea today, and I didn't agree with it at all. That's going to encourage people to fight further afield and to try to take individual systems that are good jump range further afield, so that there will be conflict further afield. So all those things are a good thing to me.
Yeah, I think that adding
it would really like hurt alliance. How would they do that? Would they make it like only alliances that go through that jump bridge, or would it be anyone on the blue list? Because you could really like Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, they have alliances in the coalition. If only Darkness can take the jump bridge, or only Slice can take the jump bridges, then
is that how it works? I don't remember.
I don't know. It's one thing that they might do. I don't know. It's CCP. Who knows?
Yeah, because like, couldn't TNT take goon jump bridges? Like, there's no. I don't know how. I don't know how they work. Like, is it based on standings, or can anyone take a jump?
It is based on standings.
Okay.
So
okay,
that like that's how it works.
You could
they can use your bridges.
You could like say what are they called? Guardians of the Galaxy. They could go from Declan, and then they could be blue with DRF for 1-op and take all the DRF jump bridges and get all the way down south very quickly.
That's how it used to be. I mean, that's how we had superhighways across all of Eve, and that's how people would have fights.
It hasn't stopped people from doing it. They've just what they did was they built typhoons in region, or they use wormholes and come through that. Like, people are still projecting subcapital power.
It's just more of a pain in the ass, and it results in like less content in the game. Like I think that my personal view on this is I don't really like space aids as a mechanic. I think that there were a lot of other ways that they could have gone with that. But adding jump fatigue specifically to jump bridges is a terrible mistake. I think that they should go back on that. Jump bridges are something that have always allowed people to get to wars and to conflicts, and they add an interesting strategic layer. Back in the day, kind of like building a castle, like a siege work next to a castle. Back in the day, we would have in the campaign against Rise and Faith Abolus during the Great War, we built the first Eye of Terror. The Eye of Terror was a jump bridge highway that went from Goonswarm's capital system right to the gates of the RIT Triangle in Faith Abyss. And we had a tremendous number of battles fighting to just, not even fighting in the RIT Triangle, but basically fighting to get and maintain the towers to have that system held for the full 30 plus days necessary in order to be able to get a jump bridge. So this huge pile of fighting over the construction of this space highway, and then once it was built, then suddenly you're cannoning people from regions and regions away. And similarly, that then gives people different points of conflict, because instead of just fighting, hey, like we need to fight over the Sov, then the enemy would try to snap the jump bridge network at various points on it, and we would have to defend like a Roman highway there. So there's this whole layer of tactical and strategic gameplay that essentially got removed when they added jump fatigue to jump bridges, and they became like, well, we could use a jump bridge or we could just take a Titan, so jump bridges are nice, I guess, but all of that vanished because of a foolish gameplay decision.
People, I mean, imagine, like, there's a lot of opportunities open. So it opens up camping, because camping jump bridges is really, really strong. And imagine, like, you want to provoke a fight with someone, there should be these strategic jump bridge systems where they've gone out, where you can either ref the jump bridge, pause, or you can Entosis the system, whichever one you want to do to draw them out. And you can force them to go way away from their capital blob, so you can fight them without being worried about all their caps being dropped on you.
Yeah, I wanna sort of ring us off here because we're almost done with the show, but I got a couple questions from dudes here that I want to hit real quick. One of them is from Bleezy, which is, who do I think wins a war of attrition, PanFam or Imperium? It depends entirely upon who's on offense and who's on defense. I think that currently the way the system is set up, if you have enough citadels and depth of field, particularly keep stars, as we've now learned, the defender is almost always going to win a war of attrition just because of the way the game is set up. I think that you're not likely to see a serious war of attrition between PanFam and the Imperium, because everybody has enough space. Like we were fucking around with PanFam and attacking their Keepstar and messing around up north, but we don't want the space up north because it's shit compared to Delve. They're not trying to attack or take Delve. They've buried themselves dug in pretty heavily up north. So there's just not that much motive for that kind of thing currently. So yeah, I don't know. Any final comments, guys, before we take off for an evening? Let's have some parting words here. Jay, what do you got for us?
Sorry, I was zoned out for a second.
I just pinged Jay. That was my fault.
Oh yeah,
I pinged him as you asked about questions.
Like parting words, ping. Okay.
Yeah. Shout outs and parting words, Jay.
Shout out to everyone who was on the op, including Pittsburgh, who got most of the did most of the legwork for that Titan.
Asher?
Yes, I would, since I have been dutifully coming on as a fill-in host for Boat for many weeks now. I would ask a boon of you. I would like to be promoted back to 24th best FC.
Considering the all of the craziness that you've been pulling off, you and your guys have been pulling off in the Northwest, that murder rampage. I don't think we talk about the ships that you've been using because they're sort of a secret, but they are zippy and they bark, kind of like Boat. You may be, I will grant you this boon, Asher. You may be promoted to the 24th, so long as you do not lose another Jackdaw.
Okay, I'll try my best.
All right. So with that, having promoted Asher to the 24th best FC, I want to thank everybody for coming and watching today. A good crowd, and thank our subscribers for supporting the channel. I hope you guys enjoy having the subscriber-only Q&A for the last 15 minutes. Got a lot of uptake on that, so that's cool. We're going to be back next week, and I don't know who we're going to have as guests, but it'll be interesting. Hopefully the game will heat up and maybe we'll find out what happened in the aftermath of all the CSM shit. Are we going to have an election? Are we not? Who knows? So thanks for coming, guys, and I'm going to play the outro, and we will catch everybody next week.
On the flip-flop.
On the flip-flop.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.